Okay, so my screen says we are recording. And I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully you're seeing our reference mode there, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so we brainstormed this back in the day, meaning
It's a little FYI too. I thought your pace and the way you introduced all this stuff was just the right speed. I know it seemed like glacial speed for you, but I felt like it was fine.
well, we have the opportunity to do that in this sort of setting,
Mhm.
right? We're doing nobody has any idea what we're doing
Right.
except you and me, Ashley and Najla. The dean doesn't know, the department head doesn't know, Kala doesn't know, Oleg doesn't know, nobody knows. And they quite frankly probably don't care.
Right.
So that means we can do kind of whatever the heck we want. And that's what we're doing. So that's not always the case, but in this particular instance, it is. And it's, it's with doctoral students, with the higher level grad students, with full grown adults rather than, 21-year-olds right out of undergrad, so on and so forth. It's a different audience, a different way of proceeding. And so we have the luxury of, kind of doing things a little less traditional. So, but anyway, all right. So just to refresh your memory. So now what I did was, here's our model. Since last week, I started fiddling around a little bit. Remember I said, I don't know if it's necessary to finish this off, but what if I did, So I did finish it off.
And did you put it into equilibrium? Yes, looks like you did.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so if you remember, we just had this last week.
Mhm.
And I said, I don't think it's necessary for understanding the reference mode, the problem statement, and what have you. The reason, if we were to do it, it would be just to show a generic structure being used again and illustrate a little more how we would get these sectors to talk to one another. But then I went ahead and did it anyway. I thought, oh, what the heck. So what I want you to see is if we go over to this area here, okay, we have a system dynamics ordering function. Now it's a very, very simple one. They can be quite different or quite more sophisticated than this, but this is very simple, but it's straightforward, right? We said we have a desired level of inventory. We have the actual level of inventory. And if there's a gap between what we want and what we got, we correct it, not instantly, but over time. And we also have to account for what we're losing. Otherwise, you open yourself up to some steady state error, and it's typically done with an averaging process. Okay, so and this particular structure starts in equilibrium if you set it up this way. It's well known. Okay, so
is your blue fraction heroin seized like an on-off button? Is that how you're handling?
That's a stub. So
Okay.
that means the fraction of heroin seized might be changing based on law enforcement gathering more or less information from snitches or whatever. Okay. So my style is to flag areas that might be made dynamic later. But for this cut of the model, it's a constant.
And it doesn't make Stella have a problem, like want some sort of fraction or input from that.
No, it's just saying if you have 100 in here and this is 0.5, then you're going to seize 50.
Okay.
If it's 0.75, you're going to seize 75 bags.
So do you just have 0 for starting it so Stella has something to compute?
In a sense, because this thing doesn't trigger until sometime
later. Oh, it's
not,
a poll. Okay.
Not at time 0. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So, so what I want you to see is that this is the exact same structure down here. Okay, we have a desired addict heroin inventory, actual inventory. And if there's a gap between what you want and what you got, you correct over time, and you're taking the average of what you're losing and adding that in here. So again, notice the equation, max 0. So we don't want to be ordering negative heroin, right? That doesn't make any sense. So if the correction over here, if you had way more inventory than you wanted, then this would be a giant negative number, right? A little number minus a big number is a big negative number. And if that big negative number, that would be this, is greater than this, then you'd have negative, you'd be ordering negative bags of heroin. That doesn't make any sense. So this is a standard formulation. Okay, now, and then we have the first order control here that says when this is empty, stop using. So in this case now, addicts times their monthly requirement, that's their desired usage rate. In the last version of the model, that was over here. It was addicts times their monthly requirement, and that's what they were just buying. Now that's not the case anymore. Instead, the addicts times their monthly requirement is what they're actually using. They're going to their pile of this stuff and using it. But then they're ordering, they want to, replace what they're using. Plus, they want to make sure their stash is adequate, whatever adequate is for them, right? There's a coverage here. In other words, you don't want, presumably, you don't want to, particularly if you're addicted, you don't want to go build to order. Like Boeing builds to order. It doesn't make 747s and put them on a shelf somewhere. And then should somebody want to come in and buy one, they have one on the shelf.
Here's your Egg McMuffin and your 747.
Yeah. Whereas I would think that addicts don't want to do that. Like, I need some, I buy it, I use it. Now I got to go get some again the next time I need it when it wears off. They want to have a pile of the stuff, a stash or whatever they call it, right? So that would be an inventory. But the difference here is, notice the correction along with the average replacement of what you're losing goes right in here, right? So we're just saying, hey, whatever they want to get, they replace. A more sophisticated model would be, they would be ordering from their supplier upstream. There'd be a supply chain, right? But that's unnecessary for this model. But over here, just to illustrate it, notice over here, it doesn't go from here, this plus this, the max of 0, or this plus this, doesn't go here, goes to here. That's the desired purchases. And here's the desired purchases.
Okay, so let's go back to the other one. How does that get into the stock of heroin for the addict? I didn't catch that because it doesn't go into the.
So bear with me. So now this is what they're ordering. So they're not just buying, they're ordering it. Now, a more sophisticated version of this structure would have a backlog of orders. So presumably the drug lord has an underling taking orders. They're calling up on their phone, I need something, I need something, and they get a list of all, and they have an underling make deliveries, right? You give 2 bags to Sally and 3 bags to Johnny, and and whatever, and they're filling the backlogged orders, but we're not doing that here. So so their desired flow of heroin, replacing what they're losing, plus making sure their stash is where they want it, is what they want to purchase. In other words, what the sales rate should be from the addict's point of view. And it will be unless the dealers are running out of the stuff. Then the sales rate here, that's over here. So
okay.
It comes in here.
I get it.
So you see how the sectors now
they're linked with that flow from the sales rate into the heroin purchase rate. Got it.
Right. Okay. So other things I did in preparation for making this into a game, I fiddled around a little bit with thinking ahead, like, well, what can we use in a gaming environment to let people fiddle with? Okay, so we'll get to that, I suppose, a little bit later on. So for our purposes right now, it's just that you're thinking ahead. You're going to make the thing into a game. People are going to have to be able to goof around with stuff, change stuff. And how are they going to change the things? What are they going to change? So you have to think about that, right? Now, the other thing I did, which was kind of fun, I just did it for giggles. Remember I said we had the multiple seizures where they would come randomly? Because you don't want it to be every third week there's a seizure. And then the drug
And they
dealers
figured it out,
learn,
right.
oh, go hide the stuff. It's the third Friday of the month. They're coming.
Right.
But the single seizure was always in month 2. And I said, that also should be randomized. So I figured out how to do that. So now the single seizure comes whenever. It's a random thing. Okay, and I had to be clever here. I had to put in a ratchet over here. So the input here is a variant from a uniform probability distribution. Okay. Okay. So if it's less than 0.015, and I had to fiddle with this number to get it to work out, then 1 times time, else 0. Okay. So it's not going to trigger very often, right? Because you're going to have a number generated between 0 and 1. It has to be less than 0.015 to trigger a 1. Otherwise, it's a 0. Nothing happens. Okay. So if the ratchet is 0, which it will be most of the time, then if the ratchet is greater than the ratchet input is greater than the ratchet, then ratchet input minus ratchet over dt, else 0. So you're going to increase the ratchet number. So it's like when you're on a car, you're jacking up your car.
Right.
It doesn't go back, right? So
So it's just creating an if then else statement just to prevent that backsliding, so to speak.
right, because you want
On your
you just
seizure rate.
want it, once it triggers, you want it to trigger, and that's it.
Right.
Okay, so and then it's going to pulse. The ratchet equals 0, then end of simulation is when it's going to pulse again, so it's not going to pulse. Otherwise, it's the ratchet plus 1. Okay. So before we go and goof around with this a little bit, notice here's our base run.
Okay.
Right? And what it's supposed to look like is this.
Okay, make that smaller again. Let me look at both of them.
So
I guess if you use your Imaginoscope, it does kind of look like that.
so there's your spike, and that's the spike here.
Yep. Yep.
Right.
In green.
And then you get the downward, your heroin inventory drops, doesn't go to 0, drops, doesn't go to 0, and then comes back.
Price goes up.
Right. And then price goes up, which one is that? The red one.
Yeah.
Is it red or orange? I can't.
It's kind of an
Orange. It's orange.
that yellow,
goes up.
orange.
And then afterwards, the crime rate goes up.
Mhm.
So we've got the order of things correct. Okay, so now we drew this freehand based on a reading of the article. We didn't talk to experts and have them draw it. We didn't get data on all these things from the Detroit Police Department or anything like that. So if we had numerical data on all these things, we could be fitting the model to the data.
Right.
Asking Stella to do that, but so we have a qualitative fit, right? The seizure rate was not quite there; it just pulsed up and down. But I think it's kind of tells the story. Okay. like I say, before we fiddle around here, we want to just make sure we acknowledge that the reference mode has been mimicked. Our scoring metric is the total heroin related crimes. We said that's very simplistic, but it's illustrative for this point in our journey to do system dynamics modeling. You can make them more sophisticated, and usually you do. Almost always you do. Now, so over here, switch for multiple seizures at 0, but switch for seizures. So we're going to seize, but if it's not multiple, it's going to be a single seizure. But let's see if it's random. So every time I run it, see, it's coming at a different time now.
Yeah,
You don't
but
know.
it creates the same behavior.
Yeah, but you don't know, the drug lords don't know when it's coming. So
Yeah.
again, is that mandatory for this model? No, but it just is to illustrate the kinds of things that you can do that would, maybe make it more realistic.
So our hypothesis, let me just go back and refresh my memory. The hypothesis is that intervening with seizures is counterproductive or may have diminished effects that we want because it causes a heroin related crimes. So we're just kind of shifting the burden to a different sector.
Well, the article tells you why it's happening. It's not a mystery as to why it's happening.
Okay.
The way the article is written, it was like mind-blowing to people of that era, the mid-1970s. The conventional wisdom was when you get heroin off the street, you're not going to have more heroin related. But then they tell you why, the chain of events that happens, and we were able to replicate. So it's not so much we don't understand why something is happening. I mean, the article explained it, and we're able to mimic it. Question now is what to do about it. That's what's a little.
Yeah, where are our leverage points and where can we intervene and have a better outcome?
Yeah, and we don't have financials in here and whatever. So it's again quite simplistic, and we could do way better if we were really doing this. Right? Okay. So how do you make this thing into a game? So first of all, why would you want to make it into a game? Well, or primarily, but not exclusively, for the purpose of letting others who have not participated in the creation of the model be able to use the model, including folks who aren't technically oriented, or at least they're not system dynamics people. So you plop this, you send them the file and say, here, have at it. And they look at this, they're like, they don't know what to do, right? But they can play a game usually quite easily, okay? So that's one reason to do it. Another reason is, for teaching purposes, I think it works nicely. Games it's just easier to get at stuff rather than you got to search all around for a switch or something and whatever. I mean, you can make an area of your electronic model here that has all the switches, copies of them, but then you're starting to build a game. So you might as well build a game. All right, so Stella Architect has the capability of allowing you to easily put a gaming interface on a system dynamics model. That was always the conundrum that, hey, it's great to make a game, but it's, how do you do it? You're slapping Visual Basic and writing Visual Basic programs on top of a system dynamics program and trying to make the things talk to one another. Vensim has a thing called VenApps, but you really gotta, it's not easy to use. There was a time when a dude named Ernst Deal, he was one of Sturman's doctoral students, and I haven't seen him in years, decades even. So he might have left the field for all I know. But when he was just out of MIT and just graduated, he made a company and a software program called Microworlds Creator. And what it would do, it would suck in a Stella model, and then you could make the Stella model into a game. But it was a separate piece of software that you had to buy and learn. But that was the most easy to use route that I can recall for making a model into a game before Stella Architect came. So this is one of the reasons that I really like Stella Architect, and I bit the bullet and switched over from Vensim because I used Vensim for many, 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 many years. And I had so
So
many.
the interface that was the main driver for doing that.
One of the main drivers. Loops That Matter is another main driver. Those two things were the two advantages that no other packages had, that were both so revolutionary that I said, I got to switch over. All right. So if you have Stella Architect, you have this little button here. It's like a computer screen or something. And if you click on it, you go to the gaming interface.
Okay.
No, and you can see the little chi-square thing here. So
Right.
you can toggle back and forth between the two, or if you have more than one screen, which I do, you can have them both open at the same time. I'm not going to do that because of the Zoom thing here, but you can see the model over here and the gaming interface over there, that kind of thing. Okay. Now the gaming interface area, if that's the way to put it, has three main components to it, three main things you work on. It has the interface, and that's the thing when you launch the game you see. Okay?
Right.
It has templates, which are, instead of starting from scratch every time, it's in some sense like a generic structure in Stella, or a PowerPoint template where
Right.
always the basic color scheme and whatever is always the same. And then a story. And the stories can be used to present the structure of a model in a very logical fashion. So people see structure and then they tie it later to behavior. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, in terms of templates, I've taken the liberty of putting two of my templates on here already. My templates are in gray. Why, you ask? Because this is the color of the System Dynamics Review. And why is the System Dynamics Review gray? Well, I was at the meeting in Jay Forrester's conference room at MIT, and we were all around this big table in his conference room area, and we were debating the start of the journal. And somebody said, what color should it be, the cover of the thing? And somebody says blue, somebody says red, somebody says orange. And then Jay's just sitting there, and when that died down, Jay says, I don't care what color it is, as long as it's gray. And that's why the System Dynamics Review is gray. And if
That's
you
so funny.
knew Jay, his house was painted gray, his suits are all gray, his Mercedes was gray. So anyway, you have to pick a color, so I pick gray. All right.
That's funny.
Now, one of the things with these games, you need to be able to maneuver around sort of like in a PowerPoint slide fashion, from slide to slide, okay, and each slide can have something different. So one way to do it is to have these tabs here. Okay, and you click on the tab and you can go to that particular page or PowerPoint slide, if that's the way to put it. Okay, that's not the only way. You can have buttons and other things, but I find this is a pretty good way to do it. The whole gaming thing is a whole course in and of itself, because you can make single player games, multiplayer games. You can have games where you hit the go button and the whole simulation runs, and then you go back and change something, the whole simulation, or you can have it simulate stop, make a decision, simulate stop, make a decision. It's all different twists and turns on gaming. And it just depends on what you're trying to do, what's effective, and so forth. So we can only just scratch the surface and whet the appetite in 550 here with this. But I found that these tabs here that allow you to just go to different, if you think of a deck of PowerPoint slides, just zoom to whatever slide you want by hitting the tab. That's the way to think about it. And I have it in a template format. So I just grab this template and plop it in the next game I'm going to make. And there it is. Now, I also have the same pages, if you will. A title page, what's kind of game or simulator is it? Who created it? When was it created? That sort of thing. The learning objectives for the game. This is a serious game. So if you talk to the learning science people, you always got to have a learning objective statement. Background information. So on heroin use or, the story and whatever. The structure of the model. Structure causes behavior. So you want to use the story feature to let the player work through the structure of the model so they see the stock flow feedback loop structure. You can put in causal loop diagrams if you want, whatever, to convey to the player the structure that's going to cause the behavior. I like to say simulation experiments because that tells the person what to do in an orderly fashion. And at the end, it's freestyle. But you don't start freestyling and just start doing, running all sorts of willy-nilly stuff. You want to take them through an orderly progression of simulation experiments, including the first one, which would be the base run. Okay. The simulation setup is when you want to change something. What if we do this? What if we do that? You go to the simulation setup page, and in the cockpit, you go over there and you run the latest, greatest simulation. You can do comparative runs, look at the scoring metric and whatever. Now, this is not the only way to do it. It's the way I like to do it, more or less. And it seems to work well for me. It's taken me quite a while to kind of get here. I didn't just roll out of bed one day and say, here it is. There's a lot of goofing around and iterations and talking to people and saying, what do you think? Like my students, was it easy to understand or did you get confused? And the whole 9 yards, right? So anyway, so that's what I do. And then I just have a gray template here if I need just a page to do something on, and it's just the same color scheme and the trending cycles logo up here. Actually, you know what I should have done? Again, we don't have enough. Normally I have a back button one here, so you can just go to the previous, wherever you were previously, but I don't have it. No matter. Okay. So we go to the interface and they give you this Latin hoochie-coo that it's everything where they're just sort of having a placeholder, right? So for me, got to kick out of it. Sometimes it gets caught. So here's what I like to do. I like to start by deleting all this crap. Starting with a clean first page. And see, it says landing page.
Yeah, how do you get back to your tabs? How do you go back and forth to the tabs? If you want to go back to the tabs from here, how would you get back?
Oh, so the tabs are in the templates.
Oh, okay. And then so you just clicked on the title page and now you're going to the interface. Okay. Okay.
So what I like to do here is, see, it says landing page without image. I'll call it title page. And let's see, no template. I'm going to use the tab template.
Oh, okay.
And
So
then
now you're linking them together, right?
Right. It's like, and I don't know why it doesn't, when it uses the template, it doesn't use the color. I have to manually change the color. No idea when. There might be some explanation. I don't know. But so this is an interface page, the title page. This is not the tab template. At the moment, they look identical because they really are, but they're different. You got to keep, you got to make sure you know where you're at.
Right.
Okay. So so when when I go here to the templates, the tab template, and I go here, title page, title page, label, title page, you want to make sure that the thing goes to the title page when you click on it, right? So let's do this. Let's test that. You always want to test. So I'm going to right click and say insert after. So I right clicked on here, insert after, and I'm going to add a blank page. Okay. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to name this, what do I call it? Learning objectives. And I'm going to also make it the tab template in the same color. So see, it says title page, learning objectives, but I haven't put anything here or here. So at the moment, they're identical to the template because there's nothing there yet. So see learning objectives. So page, it's going to go to learning objectives. See? So now I told this button in the template that when somebody clicks on it to go, not in the templates, but on the interface to the learning objectives slide. See? Okay, now let's test. Well, let's do something. Before we do this, let's go to the title page and see up here. We're going to say, we'll say, heroin related crime rate flight simulator, right? And let's make that B, let's make it transparent. And let's make it 24, maybe bigger. Center it. 28. So this is just a title. Okay, on the title page. We can say, you know, created in SD 550 by Mike, Suzanne, Ashley, and Najla. And again, we'll make it transparent. We'll make it bold. We'll center it. And we'll make it big, but not quite as big. And let's say I go to the internet. I'm not going to do this in the interest of time. I'm not going to show you it, but I'm going to Google heroin seizures images. Okay. And I'm just scanning through the pictures here on Google. I want to see something that you'd see with the typically with law enforcement. See if there's any good one here. I want to dwell on this, but
What tab are you going to put that under?
Sorry, did I make it in
Okay.
time to see the gamification?
We're trying to gamify right now.
Oh,
So-
cool.
so I'm gonna see this little mountain thing or whatever. That's for
Yeah.
a picture. And I'm gonna
Okay.
say import from the clipboard.
Okay.
And maybe it didn't copy it. Sorry, hang on. Oh, there it did. Must be a giant file. Size to frame.
Oh, look at you go, Mike.
So that, you know, that's an example of a title page where you land a landing page where you start the thing. You could say December 2023, whatever. right? Okay. So, so now we have so what I'm getting at is this. So we have a learning objective page, which is nothing on it, and we have a title page with stuff on it. Both of them are using the tab template, right? But we're in the interface now. Now, when you go up here and you say, you hit this button, you can run the game and just see
Okay.
where we're at. Let's see if it's
Right.
working. Learning objectives, it went to that page with nothing on it. Title page, it goes to the title page. So you can go to any one of these now.
This
These
is
don't
kind of like
exist.
building a website.
Yeah, or a PowerPoint deck that you can, or there was, what did Apple used to have? HyperCards. It's a deck of cards and you could zoom to various ones and go through a presentation. So yeah, it's the same basic idea. So escape. So now we go back where now we can work on it again. Okay. And over here, we might get some text and say, something like, in a 1976 article that appeared in the Boston Globe, Saul Friedman wrote about a seemingly counterintuitive
Phenomena. Outcome.
Phenomenon is good.
Yeah. Phenomena. I use that one too much. I use it for everything.
that CCU regular in vitri. Namely that when the police are successful in seizing heroin and drug street,
What I want to know is, how do they define and track heroin related crime? Like, how do they know, that crime wouldn't have, you know what I mean? Obviously that's outside of the model we're building, but it seems like that would be a pretty stiff order to actually deduce, how do they know
Yeah.
if it's, but I
Well-
mean, obviously it correlates, right? That's the point, is it correlates, so you don't need to prove causation.
now, what I find in Stella Architect is that it's best to work over here when you're revising your code. It's for some reason it's easy to lose what you're typing in. If you type in here,
Mhm.
and you can ask it if you want a border on here. You can, if you want it to be scrollable, it'll you can see, little scroll thing here. You want it to do that. So there's all sorts of things you can do. But then you'd go on to say something like your learning objectives in this simulator are as follows. 1, 2, and so forth. So whatever you tell them what you want them to learn, right? And again, we test. So title page, that's where we land when you boot the thing up. Learning objectives, da 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 da, and you put all your whatever you want to want people to learn. So in a serious game, so it's like in the military. Well, where's Ashley when I need her? You tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, then you tell them what you told them. That's what they always say, right? So, because it's like briefing, play game, debriefing. So you want to, tell them ahead of time that here's why we're doing this. It's not just ha ha. So you want to tell them, be aware of this, look for that, whatever your objectives are with the game. Again, we don't have time now to write this all perfect, but okay.
So it might be something like to understand the dynamics of the goal-seeking behavior of dealers in raising crime. Like, would it be something like that specific?
Whatever you want to make it.
Mhm.
So this is why it's not trivial to make a good game, right? You want to think about, like, why is somebody playing this thing? You want them to try, not blow it off, just mindlessly. Oh, look at the pretty curves, right? You want them to think carefully about what they're doing, try hard, and they should be getting something for the effort, some learning objectives. And then in light of those objectives, you want to design the game, right? So if the purpose of the game or the objectives in the game are to make you a better police official in terms of allocating officers to drug enforcement or other activities, then you want to talk about that here. And then the game interface, the cockpit and the setup would have allocation stuff that could
And it
be.
should be especially sensitive to that parameter, to those parameters that you're trying to teach.
Yeah, whatever. So there is no one right answer as to what this should be. It's in light of whatever you're trying to get the model and game to teach, to give insight into, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So we have 2 pages here, and we have so again, we could test. We can go title page. There we are, learning objectives, right? Okay. So next one, background information. So I would right click over here and insert a page afterwards, just add a blank page. And I would say, all right, I'm going to name this background information. I would use the tab template. I'd make it the same color. Okay, and let's see if we have accomplished that. So I go title page, learning objectives, background information. Oh, doesn't work. Okay, so this is why you always test. So now we got to go to the templates, background information. Click on the button. See page none. It's got to go to background information. See? Now we go back to the interface and we go here. So title page, learning objectives, background information. There's nothing there yet, but it went there. Okay. Okay. So again, similar but different, you'd want to decide what sort of information you want to give for the background information. I will normally have a button here. And some text. Again, in the interest of time, I'm going to have just nonsense here. Hang on, we want this. And we want this. Okay. So there'd be some text, and then I'd have a button down here. And again, you can fiddle around with the colors of the buttons if you want to do that. Some people have strong opinions about should the buttons be like, I make my buttons like this. I used to make them in red because it contrasted with the gray, and then I thought I just like it all in the same color. But what I would do is I would say, well, all right, I want a border thickness of 3. See, I'm clicking over here, border thickness. This is just preference, but I made the border thicker. And then I want a corner radius of 5. How did I come up with that? I just fiddled around till I found something I liked. Then I would go over here and I'd say the label on the button is going to be the reference mode. Oh. Reference mode. And we probably want to make this bold, probably make it bigger, something like that. So you'd have text telling you the background of system dynamics modeling, structure causes behavior, the problem, and more detail. The learning objective is more just to say a little bit about the background information, but it's more like, what are you supposed to get out of this thing? Versus let me give you the whole 9 yards here as to what's the story behind the scenes. And then after the story, because the story is going to be the police bust in, they seize the heroin inventory goes down, heroin price goes up, the addicts are poor, they're in poor neighborhoods, so they got to commit crimes to get the money to pay for their addiction, the higher prices, and they're in a poor neighborhood, so they got to commit a lot of crimes to make up the difference. You're telling, you can tell all that here. You're not going to tell them that necessarily in the learning objectives area, right?
Would you link to the article too?
You could, if you wanted. I would
That
do
was my
that.
question.
I would do that in probably in this area here.
Mhm.
You could have the original article or whatever. Actually, I do that in the one that's on the server. It is exactly that.
Mhm.
Okay, so this button, when you click on it, you got to select an action. See, select an action from the menu below. So it's going to navigate to a page. When you click on the button, it's going to navigate to a page. What page? It says home page right now. That's okay for the moment. Well, look here, I'm going to right click, insert after a blank page. And you might want to use the tab template here or not. I tend not to. I will say that this is called this reference mode, and I'm going to use the gray template. Now, normally I have a back button here, which is, I'm going to get it. Hang on here, because this is making me crazy that I had this open before, and then I said, oh, I don't need that anymore. And then now I do, because I want to get that red back arrow. So bear with me 1 second here. Just got to find it. Rather, because I had to build this button, so it's not just a can thing. That's why I'm doing this.
Is it the U-turn looking thing on the bottom left?
No, That's just to reset all the parameters. So here's an arrow that I built. And see, when you click on that button, it says navigate to last visited page. So just go
Oh.
backwards. Here. Why am I not getting? Oh, wait, did I put it in the wrong? Sorry. Oh, put it in the wrong one. Put it here. You don't need a back button when you have the tabs, right? So there. So
Oh,
when you
now it's part of your template. I get it.
So when you click reference mode on the reference mode button, it'll navigate to reference mode. And then you can just hit the back button and it'll go back here. And if you wanted to put the original article, a button to go to the original article, you could do that here and so forth. Okay, so now we test. So title page, yeah, learning objectives, background information, reference mode, we go back, we're good. Okay, so now reference mode, that's this page over here. What is that? Well, here it is, right? We did this however many weeks ago, right? So I'm not sure what the easiest way to do this is. Probably.
Can you cut and paste?
What we're going to do is this. You can do this in PowerPoint if you want. I just find it easiest to do here. This is a free software package. Obviously, if you had a graph from the newspaper or real data or whatever, you'd be using that. Right? And then you'd go back to Stella. And you'd say, I need a picture here for the reference mode. Import it from the clipboard. Size it to the frame. Probably need a title here. Okay, and again, we're going to make it B. We're going to make it transparent. We're going to center it. We're going to make it bigger. Something like this. All right, so let's test. Here's my title page, learning objectives, title page, yeah, background info, yeah, reference mode. Okay, back we go. All right, all good. Okay, so what else? Well, and like I said, you can put more stuff here. This is just to illustrate how you do this. You got to be thoughtful about what information you're going to give the player. You want to be complete to a point, but you don't want to also give away the answer or the whatever. So they go, well, I don't have to play the game. You just told me what I'm supposed to have learned. You want them to discover that, right? So you got to think about it. All right. So then we have model structure. Model structure.
Do you test people after they take the game?
Yes, in my econ classes, the students play simulators, work with simulators of macro models, and then they have online quizzes that they have to take. It says, when you did this, what happened? When you did that, what happened? So, but they can have, I'm not there, they can have the model open. and answer the questions right there. So That's how you handle undergraduates in 2023.
I was wondering more in like a professional setting, you know, where you were using the model to teach professionals how to.
Well, again, everything's audience dependent, you know.
Mm,
If there's a more rigorous requirement for really learning stuff, then it's going to be a little bit different. I always say to my dear colleagues at WPI, then they usually call me a fascist or something, but I always tell them,
mhm.
or I ask the question, what organization overwhelmingly teaches the most 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to do things? And it teaches them to do things really well. Because if you don't teach them to do things really well, people die, multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment are destroyed. Of course, it's the US military. And I always say to my dear colleagues, do you think in the Marine Corps, let's say, or it doesn't matter, pick your branch of the service, attending class is optional? Playing on your phone while the teacher is talking is acceptable behavior? I don't think so. So do we really care about teaching these little butt heads how to do
Little
stuff?
darlings.
Or are we running a friggin' day camp? But I'm old school, so. But yeah, in other settings, you know, you want, if there's some certification thing going on or something, I don't know. Anyway, all right, so we push on. So model structure. So remember, we said there's 3 areas over here: interface, template, and story. So we're going to have to deal with the story thing now. So before we do that, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to right click and say insert after blank page. I'm going to name it model structure. I'm going to use the tab template. I'm going to make it the same color. And I'm going to put up some text here where I talk about, you know, well, system dynamics is that structure causes behavior. Thus, to change a system's behavior, you must redesign its structure. You must understand and redesign its structure, blah, 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 right? Again, bold, transparent, larger. And so forth. So you give a bunch of background information about, we're worried about the structure of a system. You know, you can get into at this point the structure of a system you get the idea. You can give them the whole shooting match about structure and behavior, right? Then I would
What tab is that one under?
model structure.
Okay.
Then what I would do is I would just copy this button because I like the thickness of the border and the curvature of the corner radius rather than redoing that every time. And this button, I would say, let's call this, let's see, how about, inspect the structure of the model. Navigate to a page. No, we don't want to navigate to a page. We're going to navigate to a story. So Maybe it's better to say examine. Okay, so we're gonna go to a story. We don't have a story defined yet, but we're gonna define a story. Now, we've got to remember to routinely save our models. That's a good idea. By the way, just Najla, I don't think you saw this before. You weren't here when you can toggle back and forth between the model, and I've modified the model since last we were together. I did flesh this out. I used that same generic structure. I mentioned that last time, and I I made the single seizures random, and I just sort of made the things that you have to think ahead in the game. What are you going to let people goof around with? And I tag them in red. By the way, you probably didn't hear I have COVID, so that's why I'm kind of hoarse and wearing a vest.
That's awful. I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, thank you. It's not a problem. I mean, I'm quarantined. I'm going to be inside anyways. I might as well teach the class. but you can go between, you see the model and the interface. And if you have two screens, you can have them open on each one open, and you can go just look at them both and stuff. It's very, very convenient.
So what happens when you click on the examine the structure of the model? Does it go to the model?
I haven't done that yet.
Oh, I want to see it go to the
You
model.
guys are eager to see things. Be patient. So notice it says right now, examine the structure of the model. It's got to navigate to a story, not to a page. Navigate. No. There it is. Navigate to a story. It's navigating me to a page. I don't know why it's doing it. No matter. I think it's probably because there's no story yet. Probably doesn't like that. That's fine. So add a new story. And we'll call this heroin model. Name these things whatever you want. Right? And add blank. Okay. Now, what you want to get people to do is see the structure of the model. Structure causes behavior, right? So how to do this? Now, what I do is when I have sectors like this, modules, what I'll do is I'll put a, I won't use the story yet. I'll have a picture of this that I put into a regular page, and then I'll put a transparent button on it. And when you click on that, it goes to the story inside there. So you say, click on any sector to see the sector. So that's a more advanced, tricky thing. What we want to do here, let's see. View story settings, name, template. We can use the gray template. And home page, title pages. Like her. I see what I'm not sure is when I have them in modules and I don't do the transparent button thing I just described. I'm trying to remember because that's what I always do. See, what I want to do is get inside here, but it's not allowing me to do that here. Let's see. So it might be So I don't know if there's a way to do this. So I'm just gonna fiddle with it on the fly. For some reason, the default is this giant thing, which I don't understand why it does that either, but okay. So there might be a way to do it where you don't use the transparent buttons and you can get inside here. But I don't know how to do that because I never do that. So we'll work around that. So we'll just put the two sectors right here. So they're out of those modules, right? All right. So now we say, let's see. So what we want to do is decide what we want people to see. Now, what you do with the story typically, and we don't have time tonight to do this properly, but what you would do is there's only one story page. But what you do is the first story page would be just, we'll do a little bit of it. Hang on here. Let's do this. So I go down here. If I make it this a little bigger. This way. So I'm going to say, that's going to be the visible structure. Okay. And then you'd have another page where you could present some more of the model, then another page, you present some more of the model. So this is way too much. You'd present just a little chunk, and then the next page, a little, that chunk plus a little more, then the third page, the two previous chunks and a little more, and you talk your way through the model. If you understand what I'm saying. So I'm doing this in the interest of time, just taking a giant chunk. But the intention here is to take, just let's say this up here. Just
You
this
would
up.
start at the beginning, like telling a story. You would start at the beginning and then.
The story of the model. That's right.
Mm.
That's exactly right.
It's kind of unfolding it so it doesn't overwhelm people, right?
Right. Now you can also, so you can say, see this little commentary thing here? Annotation button. So you can hide it when editing. So you want to put some stuff in there. Okay. And make it bold. So let's see. You might say, what's a good one? So you'd say something like, Healer heroin. Jesus. Dealer heroin inventory is the stock of product obtained by the drug lords and whatever, blah, 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 blah. You describe what the stock concept dealer heroin inventory means. Okay, what, you know, whatever information you wanted to, whatever you want to convey to the player when they're reading this. Okay. And so it's hiding the button. That's the button that goes along with this thing. So again, I tend to make my buttons green and small. So I'll make them really small. Then I'll go over here and I'll make it, I think it's background color. I think is background color. Yeah, like this. And I tend to like to, again, I like my corner radius to be 5 always. And yeah, anyway. So then, and then I'll put that right here. Okay. And then this will be like right here. Then I'll say hide when editing. I'm going to save. Right. And then I would typically go over here and say, click on a button to see information about each piece of the model. Something like that. And this would be transparent, bold, green, whatever. Have to make it bigger. Or okay.
I took a workshop with Kareem Shashekli in New Mexico in 2019. He says it takes 20% of your time to make the model and 80% to design the interface.
Yeah.
Now I know why.
But see, when you click on it, it pops up. It
Yeah.
tells you about, so you could, you know, everything you want to tell it, it's there. Then you click off of it, right? And then you can go back. Oh, because we didn't start. It does work, but we didn't start there. So this, let's see, this button here. Oh, we use the gray, so that should be okay. So let's go to the interface now. We'll save it. Always good to save. Okay, so title page, here we are. Thing opens up. Here's our learning objectives, whatever they are. Our background information. Here's our reference mode. Model structure. Oh, so we gotta go back over here to the templates. The model structure button. Goes to models. It's named model structure and it goes to model structure when you click on it. So again, here we are. Learning objectives, background information, reference mode. Model structure. Oh, so that, remember we said that button was not, because we didn't define a story yet. So over here, let's see, navigate to, not to a page, to us, navigate to a story, heroin model story. Okay, now we're okay. So we go to model structure. Right? Okay, so far so good. So what else do we have here? Simulation experiments. Okay, so what I would do here is I'd right click, I'd insert after, I want a new page, a blank page. I want it to be the same color. I want to use the tab template. Okay. And I'm going to name this simulation experiments. Okay. So this is where you talk about, or I talk about, the various how you run a proper simulation experiment and talk you through different simulation experiments. First one is going to be like the base run, right? And it's going to it should mimic the reference mode. You know, so you got to put in verbiage here that talks about that, right? You have to say in system dynamics modeling, or let's say, how about using a system dynamics model for simulation experiments starts with a base run. The base run should mimic the reference node. If it does, the model offers an explanation for the problem or for the situation motivating the study, right? To generate a base run, go to the simulation setup page and click on the, now you have to thinking ahead, click on the switch for, what did I call it? So the good news is we can go over here. I called it switch for heroin seizures. So usually it's better. Button, blah, 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 blah. Then I'll often put in some sort of dividers and I'll say simulation experiment number 1. And you talk about how you are comparing the results of the experiment to the base run, how you are using a scoring metric to decide, you know, what simulation, you know, is it better or worse or not very much different. So you have to explain all this stuff and take them through each simulation run, emphasizing change one thing and only one thing. And then don't just start freestyling and turning on 3 things at the same time and whatever. Okay? That's okay. We understand that? Okay. So then simulation setup. Okay. So insert after, add blank. We'll call this simulation setup. We're going to use the tab template. We're going to make it gray like everything else. Okay. And, you know, it's, by the way, it's okay. I haven't been doing this in the interest of time, but it's okay to put titles on these things. You know, you could say, so again, people know what's always a good idea, like, where am I? Usually you know, but sometimes you don't. So on and so forth, right? So my simulation experiment page is usually very long. Base run, scoring metric and whatever, then simulation experiment number 1, do this, this, this. What happened? Simulation experiment number 2, do this. What happened? And so forth. Ding, 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 ding. And then you start to say, okay, what if you combine this one and that one? What happens now? Now there's almost an infinite, not an infinite, but there's a giant number. If you have, 7 or 8 things you can change, and if you can change them by a little or a lot, there's an infinite number of combinations of things. So you don't want to make it crazy because people are going to run for the hills. But you want to give them a representative sample of the sorts of things. You want to talk about, in this case, fighting on the demand side, fighting on the supply side. And then you let them at the end freestyle and just say, in light of your, now you've got some familiarity with it, freestyle and see what you can do. Okay. All right. So the simulation setup page now is a little bit more trickier. Okay. So we might say, well, let's see. We might say we're going to, you gotta figure out what you're going to let people goof around with. And that's these red things here. So single and multiple seizures, right? Now I made these random, which I just wanted to do that to do it because I never did that before. I thought that was kind of fun, but you know what? That's a bad idea for a game because you're trying to compare things. And if it's different every time, that's no good. Now you can put in a, so the way to make this more sophisticated would be to put in a seed value with a switch. If you put in a seed value, then the whenever the shock happens, it's always in the same place, one or many. And if you take the seed value away, then it'll shock whenever. And that you might want to do if you're playing in gaming mode, where you're just simulating it stops, nothing's happening. Suddenly something happens. Now what are you going to do? See? So over here we have what? We have word of mouth effect. That's, the DARE program, just say no. We have getting people into treatment, getting people to quit, and the recidivism rate, either, making it less, right? So that's on the demand side, right? And then over here, this would be more on the supply side, or the socioeconomic factors over here, right? So we have, like, you could have an incomes policy here for the addicts, give them some money so they don't have to commit crimes. Like here's a bunch of cash to buy your heroin, or a voucher or something. Some countries have experimented with, you go to a place, a government run place, and you just get it for free. You don't have to commit crimes, right? And then you get, you can change it if it's an affluent neighborhood versus a poorer neighborhood. See how that matters, right? And again, there's no financials or anything in this model, so it's a little obvious as to what would happen, right? So you could go over here. What I'm getting at is you could say, you could get a text box here. I'll do this a lot with my games. Border style, none. I'll have a solid border. I'll make it size 3. I like it size 3, and then I like my corner radius to be 5 always. And I might make this one red. And I call this demand side policies. Right. And then you can say, copy and paste. You'd have, obviously. Light side, oop. Policies, make this something else, whatever blue better. And then, you'd want probably the other thing that's in the game, the model are sort of so how rich the neighborhood is, that sort of thing. So I like to sort of cordon off my different policy areas. In this case, it's because we're claiming that, in this sort of problem, you fight on the demand side, the supply side, or whatever. Okay, so what on the demand side, what might we do here as an example? Well, we could say, let's see. Have a variable here, a slider. And part of the problem is you got to send these to the back and they get in the way. So I usually like put them off to the side until I got this under control here. But we might say, got a converter one here. I'm not sure what the heck that is. That's no good. Question mark is no good. Desired here. So when I copied and pasted, I must have done something. I'm going to have to fix that because this thing won't run. Right. Let's see if we, let's fix while we're thinking about it. Where's the problem here? Check spelling. What we want is, we just want this, right? So now, since we're not going module to module, we're just in the same deal here. So we're going to go this like this. Oh, is there anything else goofy here? What is this? Everybody see what I did there? See, this thing I was previously in a module. So I took it out and it's goofed it up. Now it has to be a ghost instead of a whatever they call it to make it the modules talk to one another. Then over here, I need a ghost here. So hopefully that's all the headaches. Okay, so it runs. Cool. Rid of that run. So model's back in working order. Cool. And back over here. So if we're going to fight on the supply side, we can say like, just take a representative. Change in the fraction going into treatment, month to activate, initial fraction. Addicts going into treatment. So we can say, change in the fraction of addicts going into treatment can be a minimum of 0, maximum of what, something like, I don't know, whatever, 0.5. increment it by 0.01, reset it at the end of the simulation. And we're really not changing the fraction. Into treatment. Change in fraction month to activate treatment policy, initial fraction annex. Okay. So it'll probably make this bold. You guys bearing with me here? Or am I boring you to
Mhm.
tears?
No, I mean, I'm keeping up.
Okay.
I'm
I was
hanging with it
thinking
here.
that it's actually fairly realistic because for it to have the maximum of 0.5, because there's no way you would get more than half of an existing addict population to go into treatment voluntarily, even if you offered it for free and gave them a right. So I was
Okay.
thinking it seems pretty realistic.
And then over here, we'll have a numeric input over here. Again, I'm just picking stuff to illustrate. So this would be, let's say the month to activate treatment policy. They can type that in, whatever month they want to initiate it in. And then you would probably want a numeric display here. You could say initial fraction addicts going into treatment. So the player would know initially it's 10%, starting in month 4, but you can change that, and then you can change this 0.1 to something up to 60%. Maybe that's aspirational. Now, of course, I'm just quickly doing, I'm looking at my clock here and we're running out of time. So send it to the back. Okay, and then you could do the same, but you'd have the other stuff in here too. So you'd have to make it smaller, or you'd have to use multiple pages to fit it all, right?
Would the recidivism rate go into the demand side as well?
Yeah, yeah. Any of this stuff over here, these four things. The socioeconomic factors would be the incomes policy. Are you going to give them money so you don't have to commit crimes, and how affluent is the neighborhood they live in, or whatever. And then you could manipulate the seizures. Supply side. Okay. And then finally, because I'm running out of time here. So this is a simulation setup. You'd be telling the player, go to the simulation setup and do this, do that, right? So once they do that, you tell them, now you go to the cockpit. So the cockpit here, you go to, well, there's no cockpit page here yet. Sorry, my bad. So you go here, and you go insert after, blank page. We're going to use, the name will be cockpit. We're going to use the, once again, the tab template in the same color, right? And then we're going to go here. And we're going to make sure that the cockpit button, when clicked on, goes to the cockpit page. Okay. And then let's save and make sure everything's doing what it's supposed to. up to this point, and you can never do this too often. Learning objectives, background information, reference mode, model structure, simulation experiments. So templates, simulation experiments. Yeah, go to simulation experiments. And simulation setup. Go to simulation setup. So model structure, looked at that already. Simulation experiments, do this, do that, do this, do that. Simulation setup. Okay. And then you go to the cockpit. So there's nothing in the cockpit. So the cockpit, we might put down a graph that has let's see. Well, you can overcrowd these things. So maybe just dealer heroin inventory. Heroin price. And
The seizures.
yeah, I don't want to overcrowd it. It's just you'll see the result of the seizure. Say heroin crime rate. Now you can put these on one thing on different graph. It depends on whether or not you want a comparative graph or not. I'm just trying to illustrate the different sorts of things you can do here, right? So you can make it transparent. I like to do that. And this should look like the reference mode at the beginning, and you could say stuff in the simulation experiment. So you might want to copy this button here. And when somebody runs the thing, if they want to see the reference mode again, it's just easy to get to it. Right. And then you might want to make a comparative graph. Again, we're doing this quick here. So what we're going to do, a comparative graph, you can only have one thing on it. And so we're going to have that scoring metric, total heroin related crimes, and we're going to make it comparative. Okay. We're going to make a button here. I just like to copy the buttons. It's easier that way. And you can make them different colors if you want. And in this button, we're not going to navigate to a page. We're going to run the model. And we'll say model. We'll make another button here. We'll say set run name. We'll say name the run. You can say, we'll do one more just for giggles. We'll say, this one will say, advanced time in ballistic mode, and we'll make it every 4 months. Run the model in 4. That's if you want it to pause and allow you to make some decisions. And, then back here, we probably want to say, the supply side, sorry. I know we're running out of time here, but we want to, well, this is nice because we're looking at all the different features here. So this time we're going to get a switch. And look at the switches. Switch for seizures. They should all be in blue, right? Blue.
You're making it blue because it's a supply side policy.
Yeah, I find the coloration helps.
Mhm.
Switch for heroin seizures. And then we'll say over here. Switch for multiple seizures. This is already on. So like if we go here, see it, sorry. See, it's a 1 already. That's why the button was flipped over there. See, now it's not flipped. And again, interest of time and all that. All right. So title page works, learning objectives, background information, model structure, simulation experiments, simulation setup, and cockpit. Okay. So you can say, well, run a base run. So don't do anything here. So just run the model. And it's in equilibrium, right? Okay, so that's not really the base run. So, you could say name it and call that equilibrium. I don't know that we need to do that, but it's a nice reference point. And again, you'd be going here and it'd be telling you what to do step by step. Then you say, let's have a seizure, single seizure. That's going to be random. Oh, one thing I want to do, another button here that's important. Store all devices. Clear all results. All right. Okay, so if you said that equilibrium thing is just in the way, you clear it. So now we're going to try single seizure. Now it's going to be random, but there should be a way to turn that on and off because you want the randomness thing you could run in 4-month increments, but we run the model. Okay, heroin price is not, oh, sorry. So so we put it all in the same graph. We probably want it to be multi-scale.
What does that mean? Multi-scale?
Different scales here. Because
Oh,
otherwise
yeah,
the same
okay.
scale, it was
Right.
overwhelming
That's
the
right.
$9 price or whatever.
It
And then you
made it
say,
look
what's
like
the
it was
reference mode?
zero.
Is that?
Mhm.
Yeah. Then you say, all right. And then of course you would name that. So this would probably be, the base run. Okay. So now you're going to say, all right, what if we only have one, we're going to boost this to 35% from 10%. What happens now? So we want the comparative result. This is going to go away. That's the base run. That's going to disappear, but the comparative is going to stay. Okay, so that's, what was that called? 35% in treatment. Okay, so clearly if that's our scoring metric, that worked pretty well, right? Now, it's really a little misleading because it's triggering and I don't have a what do you call it? The seed value. So it's triggering at different times. So it's going to be a little misleading. But anyway, you get the idea. then you could say, clear all results, and you want to see everything resets. So we were going to want to flip on a policy again, and we're going to run the model in 4-month increments. So in this case, it triggered early. So now you could go over here and say, all right, in light of that, well, there'd be all sorts of things you could goof around with, right? But, so let's boost that up. Nope. Anyway. So I should have hit this one. So you can pick the number, how far you want it to go, and then stop and then change things. So this is kind of not good for that purpose. This particular game doesn't really lend itself to that, but other games do. Like the leader subordinate game, where are we at now? Should I change the goal? Should I boost it or lower it? Should I praise or criticize? That sort of thing.
Mhm.
I am like super way over time. All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry I joined late. I had taken this off of my calendar. I didn't know that we were going to go so late in the year, and then I had to use my manual brain to remember to come to class, which is why I was late. Sorry about that.
No problem. So there you have it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's my rendition of 550. Different people do it differently. But the goal was to give you a sweeping overview of the field, from who was Jay Forrester and blah, 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 famous models, to why we model and characteristics of complex systems and time shapes and reference modes and molecules, and introducing the software. And then big models come from little models, and looking at time shapes like oscillation, overshoot and collapse and whatever. And then building a little model from start to finish, including making it into a game, right? So like everything you want to know about system dynamics in one course. Now, there's going to be somebody who sees these 17 lectures and can model like John Sturman. But there's a bell curve here, and that person is way out on the tail of the distribution. That's not normal. But there are some people who get it, and they're off to the races. There are some people on the other end of the bell curve who never get it. They can have 11 courses like this and never get it. I don't know why. And it's nothing against them, but they're not wired. They never get it. Everybody else is in the middle of the bell curve, which means you need more than this course to be able to build PhD level, research level, insightful, original system dynamics models, right? And you gotta, I don't mean you guys, but a person has to sit still long enough and practice, 10,000 hours to be an expert at something, to get really good at this, because it is not easy. It kind of looks easy. There's what we did algebra, multiplied, divided, added, subtracted. The math wasn't per se very hard compared to string theory and linear algebra and polar coordinates and imaginary numbers and all the crazy stuff you can get into with mathematical dynamics. We don't worry about that. Some people do. When you're writing the software behind the scenes, you got to worry about stuff like that. But some people will have to build the car, build the software. Other people just want to drive the car, use the software, right? So the focus is taken off of, derivatives and integrals and, derivative of sine is cosine, and how do I integrate secant cubed and all this crazy calculus stuff. And instead, the focus is on, how do I hear about, examine, see, read about whatever, a dynamic system experiencing a problem, and translate the relevant stuff into a model with admittedly user-friendly software, but still it is not easy.
Mhm.
So if a student likes what they've seen for the last, in this case, 17 weeks, then my recommendation is you take some more. If you had your fill, no mas, I get it. It's cool, but I got other stuff to do. That's also okay. But this is not enough for the average person to build professional level system dynamics models. So it just, to each his own. And I'm, I know you guys have the aspiration to go on, so I don't mean it directed at you. I'm just talking in general.
I wonder if that, I mean, to me, what I've noticed in my domain of veterinary medicine, a similar sort of phenomenon. And there are some people that are really, really good at ultrasonography, and they can really conceptualize anatomy three-dimensionally really well. And then there's just other people that can kind of fake it, like me. And even if I spend a lot of time really working at it, it's just not the way my brain is wired. I don't conceptualize things three-dimensionally, so it doesn't really matter what position your patient it is. And I think system dynamics is like that too. It seems the thing that I find when I talk to other people they struggle with is the idea of stuff or information flowing and how it changes the stalks and how the stalks function as baffles and they slow things down. Some people just really seem like they just don't understand that. And it's just hard for them to grasp.
Well, it's a lot of it is counterintuitive. It's not taught in the schools. Not in, you're introduced to it as adults, rather than as kindergarten students where they start teaching you this stuff. So not surprising. But at any rate, the point is it's a niche area. Right? It's arguably a very powerful area. Not that many people in the world can do it at a high level. And, we have a presence in the field at WPI, so that's good. And, systems thinking is more and more a popular concept now, not necessarily system dynamics, but it's a way to do systems thinking. So I think we're pretty well positioned to stay alive, bring in students and whatever. Right.
I think there's so much opportunity for using small models for helping people solve problems and think differently, especially if you can take like a simulation a game like you just created and post it on a website like we talked about. And so people can interact with it.
Yeah, you can have a whole collection. I have like 17 economic simulators that I want to write a book, and then the simulators correspond to the book where you can go and actually play around with them. People today are familiar with video games, so it's not a big deal. When I first started out, the idea in economics anyway of using simulation was like, nobody understood what I was doing. The old timers back then were all like dead now. But they were like, we don't know what you're even doing. It's like, this is so weird. It's probably, they were saying, it's probably very good. It looks very sophisticated and kind of neat, but we can't interpret what you're doing. Because back then, that we were rolling out of the punch card era. You did Fortran and COBOL, and that was it. So the engineers at NASA did some kind of simulations, but economists didn't, or social science. So today it's very different. People are quite used to doing, video games and stuff. So it's less daunting. In fact, in some sense, our games are disappointing to people who are used to like being in the simulation. They have the Oculus goggles on and they're like in the simulation.
They expect like a VR experience.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Metaverse and all that crazy.
Mhm.
So, but of course we're doing serious games. So we're trying to learn from the games, develop insights into dynamic systems experience.
But not everyone has to play a game to learn from the model. Like a modeler can simply pull out the valuable pieces of information for policymakers too, right? You don't always.
Yeah, you're not going to get Joe
always,
Biden to sit still and play the game.
That's what I mean. Yeah, you don't always convey all the valuable information in a game, do you?
The higher up the food chain you go, the less these people want to see any detail.
But like you said, maybe some of his people would play
the staffers usually, do the deep
Mhm.
dive, and then they brief the higher
The
up.
people who actually, yeah, the people who actually get in the weeds would want to play it.
Yeah, in my experience, when I've done stuff in Washington, is the staffers are good. They're really on the ball.
Mhm.
Politicians, not so much.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
And then lastly, always bear in mind, and then we'll end up in this because I gotta eat supper here. The not everybody has to be Jay Forrester. Not everybody has to be able to build original system dynamics models at the highest levels while being able to facilitate with a group of chief executive officers and whatever. There's a whole lot of different skill sets smeared together there. You can build a model, you can make a good game, you can facilitate with high level people and get them to tell you accurately what they know and work that room, and they're not seeing you as a punk kid, or there's power relationships going on in the room, or whatever. To do all that stuff in one person is very hard. I mean, that one person is almost a Venn diagram that's a null set, that not everybody has all the skills. So you kind of have to, in my opinion, pick what you're good at. So if you're good at building games, do that. You might not build the model, but you're good at building games. You might be good at building models. You might be good at facilitation. You might be good at teaching people how to use models properly. And then, you know enough to, when you hit your limitations, you go work with somebody because you're known in the field, and you say, look, I got some funding here and I need you to help me do X, because you need to do this piece. I'll handle this other piece. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, we didn't go to the moon with one person doing everything, right? So you just have to, people need to, find their place in the system. So, but this is a sweeping, I mean, we didn't get into model validity and sensitivity analysis and policy optimization. There's more stuff to learn: group model building techniques, judgment and decision making, let alone applying it specifically to healthcare systems or economic systems or environmental systems or whatever. So you can see there's a lot here. You can take course after, we used to have like 12 graduate courses, right? So, it can go on and on. But so this is just is intended to whet the appetite, right? And you say, I kind of got the big picture here, right? And then you want more or you don't.
Are there, I mean, are these other classes available at WPI for people that are on
They are
campus?
still on the books. But you got to get somebody to teach them. And ideally, the person who teaches the class, whether it's a faculty member or an adjunct, the student would pay tuition, and some of that tuition would go to the teacher. WPI doesn't always see it that way. So it's hard. So it can be an independent study, but that just comes out of the hide of the person who's
Teaching it?
teaching it. They say, well, you're drawing a salary from the university, so you should do stuff like that. Now, if it's one or two people, to be honest with you, it's not that burdensome, particularly if you do the course all the time. It's kind of like, yeah, I can do it backwards and forwards and upside down. It's not a lot of prep work or anything. On the other hand, depending on, somebody says, well, I need Khaled's 551 course, and he's not going to teach it. He's going to retire soon. But all the videotapes are there. So Mike teach it, but use Khaled's videotape. That's a lot of work for me. Figure out what the heck the guy's doing, because he and I do not model the same way. We are very different in our approach to it. It's not saying he's right and I'm wrong or vice versa. It's just that we're just do it differently. So I would have to study what the hell he's doing. I haven't taken his classes. I mean, I know broadly what he does, but Oleg, I'm not entirely sure what he does either. Let alone Jim Thompson passed away, but we have his stuff. Any of that sort of, Andy Ford is retired. John Moorcroft is retired. We have their stuff. We could do it, but somebody has to volunteer to hold their stuff up and, use those tapes and teach it, but using the lectures or redo it their own way. It's a lot of work.
Oh, it's an enormous amount of work. Yeah, I can tell.
So realistically, we're not going to have a degree in system dynamics anymore. We're going to have a degree in global health. We're going to have a degree in science and technology for innovation and global development. And there's probably 10 courses you'd take in those programs, maybe 3 of which are system dynamics courses, and the rest are other stuff. As opposed to used to take 10 system dynamics courses. We just don't have the staff, and the university killed it all. So, and then people retired, died, whatever. And so, that's
Are
that.
the newbies being trained up to be that potentially could be hired to teach those courses?
Well, yeah, first of all, you'd have to have the students. The university's not going to run the thing if there's 3 students or 5 students or something. They want to see like a minimum of 10, all paying $5,000 for the privilege of taking the class. That's WPI's position always. So that's why I created Trending Cycles. I'm trying to get it for, $150. You can take the class, but it's self-paced. The tapes are there. You just watch them.
Right.
I don't have to be live lecture. I mean, that'd be impossible.
Right.
And you can start and stop. You can start whenever you want, go at your own pace, finish whenever you want. You can get a badge, stuff like that. But it's, and then gradually we put more and more and get people to create courses and just say, look, you'll get some of that rev. So if these massively online courses, massively open online courses, MOOCs, some of these guys get 100,000 people taking them, each paying $100, a lot of money. You get a popular course. Now it's worth somebody's while, So, this is kind of what, we're noodling through to try and resurrect these things that these idiots these administrators killed at WPI, because they didn't know what it was. They didn't know how to market it. They didn't listen to us. And then they, so
Yikes.
Why would the system dynamics program be less popular with administrators when like complex systems and complexity is all the rage? And